Alright, shall we begin? We call the meeting to order. Yep. So I'll establish a quorum. Vice Chair Van Rees.
Here.
Chair Ryan. Here. Commissioner Nee.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wu. Here. Commissioner Whedon.
Yeah.
And let the record show that Commissioner is absent. We have a quorum. Alright, next is public comments on items not on the agenda. Lonnie, are you commenting in general or something
Yes.
on the agenda? Yeah.
Here. Here.
You can put it so we're going to take better film on the side. What? Isn't true.
So, I'm John Hearing. I'm a member of Los Altos Rotary Climate Action Committee. I'm here today to speak on behalf of myself and other residents who are concerned about the proposed use of artificial turf at the ballpark of Hilton. My colleague on the Climate Action Committee, Peter Landsberger, spoke to you on this subject last month. Artificial turf is still made from plastic and rubber, materials that contribute to microplastic pollution, chemical runoff, and high carbon emissions. It contains hazardous chemicals like lead, phthalates, PFAS, forever chemicals, with growing evidence of long-term health impacts. Leading environmental health groups, including the Sierra Club and the Santa Clara Medical Association, oppose artificial turf use. Artificial turf is not a green solution. It poses risks to human and environmental health, contributes to urban heat, and eventually ends up in a landfill, adding to a total waste. This directly contradicts the goals of the Environmental Commission, including but not limited to their 2025 work plan goal to promote green, sustainable landscaping. I urge the Commission to place the issue of artificial turf on their agenda and to develop a formal recommendation to the City Council opposing its use on city-owned property. Artificial turf is a step in the wrong direction for Los Altos, and now is the time to stop it.
All right. Given there being no other comments, I'd like to welcome Hunter Roosevelt. He's the founder of Conservation Technology Accelerator.
I know you're driving a little better on the presentation.
So I guess you should call the presentation about it.
Got it.
Yeah, it makes it too slow. It's on PowerPoint.
Okay, yeah, I think videos that are probably not gonna.
Okay.
Well, I'm doing some intros on the
Yes,
presentation.
I was thinking, why don't you go yourself? Because
Oh, okay.
Hunter is a Los Altos, so I think grew up here, right?
I'm born and raised in Los Altos Hills. I guess growing up here, nature and technology are two things that you really can't avoid. A love for nature and an understanding of how powerful technology is. I went to school at Buffalo where I got my mechanical engineering degree. And then when I came back home, I thought, how can I use my engineering background, my understanding of technology to help something that I love, which is the planet. I think really because I think my work that I'm currently have projects in South America are actually quite applicable here. So the place where I live more than here, I moved back. So I guess
Present or giving permission to play the videos.
Sorry about this. So, about a year ago, I went out, and figured out, all right, I want to work in conservation. I have this engineering background, and I'm interested to do. So I went out, and spent a couple of years doing field work, in conservation. touched a lot of things, all 7 continents, figured out how a lot of organizations work. And I wanted to see how I plug into the technology side of things. And what I learned is there's actually a very small, if not non-existent side of technology for conservation. So about a year ago, I started Conservation Technology Accelerator, which
We good? We good? Okay, we can probably.
So, starting a new organization called Conservation Technology Accelerator. We're at 501c3, and our mission is to provide technology solutions to help conservationists and restorationists accelerate their impact. Using the same technologies widely utilized in the private sector, we deliver critical solutions to conservation organizations protecting them. So the problem that I found while working in the field was that there's significant barriers to entry for this type of technology, mostly the cost, complexity, the cost, the complexity, and the lack of tailored solutions. And so how CTA addresses these is we own and operate our technology, we design and maintain the solutions, and we use and advocate for the continued development of these technologies. So a little more of what we do is we provide right now animal population surveys as well as land surveys. And so with collaborating with the technology developers to adapt solutions that are really widely used in both private and public sectors, we can then prioritize conservationists in accomplishing their goals. So really more of how this looks is we identify an objective with all our partners. So do you need to count a specific type of tree? Do you need to identify all the trees in your area? Do you need to find certain animals, the time that the animals are there? Right, the conservation questions are unique for each area that you're in. And then from there, then we figure out, all right, how do we start building a solution? And it starts with collecting data, figuring out the right hardware, creating a methodology on how to collect that data, and then ground truthing to make sure that what we're actually doing is Saturday Council is I think. So they walk through with a clipboard. It takes 12 people about an entire day to count 1 square mile. Now, these colonies can be over 100,000 penguins. There are 30 plus colonies in the country. You can kind of see where the problem is. So our proposed solution was a drone with sensors on it. So we went out and selected of different data. So not only RGB, which is like traditional images, so that in the middle is the same area but with a thermal camera, as well as LAO, which is like a 3-dimensional data type, so you can actually see it all. Then we did some pre-processing, which is making it into a standard format. That doesn't look like much, but it is 1 square mile of super high resolution thermal images, all stitched together. Here's a close-up of it, sort of pre-process on the left, and then post-process on the right, which is the computer going through and going, oh yeah, these are where the penguins are, actually counting them. So a lot of places at home is Costa Rica. This is in collaboration with the Macabre Network, and their objective was to find a specific type of tree in their forest. This is what the forest looks like. To find these, the satellite imagery is not good enough, and going through the forest on foot, again, is not a viable solution. And so we went and we collected all this data. The top left is just a normal image. The top right is that 3-dimensional example of their reserve, a portion of it. On the bottom right, you can see sort of that's 3-dimensional, another angle of it. On the far right is a multispectral image, so that can show things like how much water the vegetation has, whether something is alive or dead, cover types, and then just so you can see on the bottom left there is sort of Google Images or Google Earth versus the images we're collecting. So this is an image, right? Really high resolution stuff. And we can pull topographical features from the 3-dimensional point cloud. We can pull water content in the specific vegetation or soil water content, the land cover type, and the most exciting is the species level identification. So that looks a little bit like on the left is just a normal image. Once we put it through an AI called Understory, we're actually able to find things like water, the specific species of grass, specific species of tree, down to the pixel. So a little closer to home, Woodside, is just to give you an idea of some of the data collected here. This is the 3-dimensional data collected from a drone as we're flying around. Kind of choppy, but you can see, see the structure of the trees, the colors, and you can take a cross section to see kind of what the cross section looks like. This is all just essentially raw data. The exciting thing is we've upgraded sensors since this. So this is basically as basic as it gets. You can see sort of different tree heights. You can measure the trees, see land use. So then if we get even closer to home, this is the vegetation that I was talking about. You can see the red is the road, green is super lush, lots of water content. You can see the redwoods have a little bit less water in them because this was in the middle of the summer. So even closer to home is in Los Altos Hills, just a couple minutes away. Again, a property, and you can sort of see the level of detail that you can get from just the raw data. Intensity type. So not to get too nerdy with all that, but if we want to get nerdy, I've got all that information.
Right away, man.
So yeah, you can see that this is a height model, so the different colors correspond to different heights. You can see there'll be a cross section where you can kind of see the elevation and everything, which is a little better explained in, for example, this photo of the cross section, so you can see. Yeah, so that is the data that we can collect, but as I showed you kind of in the earlier projects, there's always an objective to why we're collecting that data and what process needs to be used. And so I think specifically with the tree identification and being able to count that, land cover, land use, and even being able to see kind of waterways when there's water in them or when there's no water in them, might be really applicable and a project that's closer to home and closer to matter. I'd love to open it up to questions if we have time. Cool.
Yeah, it was fascinating. Questions?
I would have one, yeah. First of all, thanks for a really interesting presentation. And it struck me when you said mixing nature with technology. I think that's really resonates with a lot of us. Do you think it's possible to, if you were to map out an area to calculate the carbon reduction potential of the treescape? So by mapping out like the trees, the specific plant types, to back out kind of a yearly, net benefit for the climate from that?
Yeah, so one of our projects in Colombia, actually, we're focusing on carbon sequestration, the reforestation project. And so we have especially the LiDAR data mixed with what species everything is we'll be able to tell you sort of how much carbon exists there. And so year over year, if you do those surveys every year, every 6 months, or every 5 years, seeing the change in the environment, you'll be able to track how much carbon you're sequestering. That's a methodology used a lot in carbon crediting, is using LiDAR to see sort of the carbon biomass.
Do you know if there's a way of approximating the age of, say, trees, for example, by their size?
Yes and no. It's more of an answer thing. So that's something that we focus a lot on, is that we collect this data, but then we got to do something with it. And a lot of the partners that we have work in those areas, and ground truthing is a huge part of it. So if we were able to know the age of, say, 10 different trees, calculate those heights from this data, then we can be able to map how high something is, correlate that to an age, and then take that for the entire area that we fly.
Thanks.
And ground truthing, is that you saying just verifying? Is that what that means?
Yeah, so an example for the boundary network, where we're identifying a specific type of tree in that forest. Right now, actually, the data is out with our partner in Costa Rica, and they are walking basically through the reserve, identifying where those specific tree species are, drawing them on the map, and sort of training the AI to be able to make sense of all of the different data that we're putting into it.
Okay.
So the cool thing about, ground truthing, it still requires a person to be able to do all that, but then you build that model, and then you can use that model for a much larger area than one person can actually cover.
I have a lot of for the drone, how much area are you able to cover in how much time? I guess what's the average?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. It really depends on, it's a really beautiful, complex equation. Essentially, the bigger the drone, the longer it can fly, so the more area you can cover. The bigger the drone, the bigger the sensor you can carry. So the higher resolution at different heights, which tells you how much area basically each photo that you take can tear out, as well as kind of exactly the data that you need. So if you want to find a specific tree species, you need sort of centimeter level resolution. But if you're just looking at how much forest cover do we have, the resolution you need is less. So you can fly it higher, you can fly it faster, you can get more area. So it's a multi-dimensional solution.
What about the seven,
Gosh, yeah, also.
7 square mile city?
What's the top end that you've experienced of like the highest resolution? How much area has that been able to cover in an hour?
Sure. So this is some of the equipment that we have. This electric platform is just, looks like a drone that give for Christmas or get for Christmas. It's much bigger. Don't let the photo fool you, but runs a couple of these systems. That's that entry level enterprise technology. With that, we're able to do 1,000 hectares in a week and a half. In the dense forest. So to convert, that's about 3 square miles in a week and a half. With our new system, carrying much more advanced, higher resolution sensor, our battery envelope is 25 times faster collection.
Okay.
So a few days in order to collect this 7 square mile swath of land for all of those data types. Multispectral, LiDAR, RGB, no reason to do thermal, but we could.
So you're saying a few days to cover the equivalent of all of Los Altos?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I had all questions like
And then for analysis, et cetera, if you wanted, well, I'll let Kyle go first. This is up.
my next question was like, what's the smallest species that you've been able to track?
So we started a year ago, right? So humans are the only species count that we're working on right now. They're incredibly they are underground. So I'd be happy to talk to you about that after, but sort of, rugby-sized creatures are the smallest, but this comes to that question on how much area can you actually take. You can fly the drone, pretty low to the ground, which then makes your detection, size smaller.
Yeah.
Then, the area you can take is less, or the sensor you have to have is a lot bigger and heavier and more advanced, more expensive.
Okay.
So it really does, the methodology is influenced a lot by the objective that we have.
Yeah.
So how long does it take you to analyze from all the image data you've taken?
So,
To map out,
yeah, so
by different species of the trees that we have here?
I guess just the computer part is a couple of days for it to crunch all the numbers. We could, computer, get server space, all that stuff. A couple of days to get from exactly what comes out of the drone to some of the things you were seeing.
Right.
And then the analysis portion of that, we are still figuring out how long, but a couple of hours to a couple of days for the AI to crunch everything. What it really comes down to is the ground truthing again. So there still has to be a human to say, this is a redwood tree, for example, and then go and circle 100 redwood trees. It would take probably an hour, a couple hours, and then the computer would be able to take that information, figure out for itself what a redwood tree looks like with all the different data types we have, and then find them all and have them.
So when you showed us all those hills, what was that area / project?
That is my mom's house.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking. And so my next question is, if you were to do something regarding trees in Los Altos, what does permissions look like? Or have you had to navigate private residences yet?
So most of the areas we've operated in by our partners, or at least there's a land agreement with someone else, and so it's a single owner and they know we're doing the flights. We have not looked into sort of flying over or working with a city to fly over private property. The flight paths and basically having the drone be an aircraft and having that get okay, that process is pretty straightforward. You file your flight path, especially if it's long and far with the FAA, and you find an exemption where they're able to populate that information. These drones look like aircraft to other aircraft, and we would be flying low. If an airplane was flying at the height we're flying for this collection, we'd be having a different conversation. But yeah, permissions are something that we'd have to look into.
Okay. That's my mainline question.
So I wanted to add on, Shopping's question, about, well, you're talking about the ground truthing piece taking the longest time. If you have a data set already where, for example, the city of Los Altos maintenance department has a list of trees on their public land, so you have that database already, and you feed that into your model, would you then be able to back out at least the trees that are listed in that database? And
Yeah, so
you still have to do a whole lot of ground truthing.
it depends on kind of how good that data is.
Uh-huh.
And if we have, I doubt that there is, exact GPS coordinates for every tree. So it would probably take a human being in between going, here's that tree, finding it on the computer, and then, doing the manual circling on that image for those species. We are actually, like I said, this data is out to our partner right now, and part of the collaboration that they've agreed to is logging how long it takes them to circle their trees. So I can give you a better answer.
What percentage of the trees would they circle?
Have
Have enough, for what percentage of the area they'll have to cover?
The urban area is kind of the rule of thumb on AI and training AIs. That's something that we're also figuring out, right? This is that collaborative, iterative process that we're playing a big role in. So we have to see how much we do, but that's why you do a ground truth area, for example. So at the time the model is able to identify all the trees in that section that you've chosen and looked at with a human, then you can say, oh, the model is good enough or accurate to within this amount, and that's sufficient for our purposes.
So with your experience, you say you did this in Colombia. Could you tell us what is the I think AI, you have to train it with adequate data so that it can predict something correctly. How long does it take for the model and also the misclassification rate? What does that look like, say initially, and when you have, more coverage? I think over there, ecology is quite different from here. And I think the species is also quite different from here. So, so your database right now probably has a lot of South America. Which species, the model, right?
Yes.
And we're able to categorize it.
Yeah, so the company that we use, the AI that we use for this, basically every new data set that you upload, you can either apply an existing model to it or train your own.
Right.
And so we're training our own, but we have to check with them to see what existing models they have that we might be able to apply that might already be sufficiently ground truth. But again, that's part of the sort of R&D cycle, is figuring out the answer to that question is how much do we need? The models are sort of species agnostic, so it's not as if the AI is specifically meant for South America. They can be used kind of with any plant species.
Doesn't the complexity accelerate, if you will? If you look at trees in Los Altos, there's redwood trees, you can circle them and everything, but there's a whole variety of different species. I imagine it's couple thousand types of trees in Los Altos, and you would have to go around and say, okay, well, this is this species, and then you have to get a sampling of it within your Los Altos data to even be able to identify that species. So isn't it a rather large project to identify an area that you may be looking at, I'll pick a number, I don't know, several hundred different types of trees?
Yes, so it is a large project. In Costa Rica, or in Colombia, the old growth forest has 180 different types of trees. So my assumption is that if we kind of exclude the niche landscaping ones that people bring in, right, the actual endemic species here are a lot fewer. But it is a large project. And I think given the specificity that we're requiring.
You can get the native species, but basically, a lot of people have ornamental gardens, if you will, they create their own. So there's a lot of imported types. And so that adds to the complexity.
Yes, if we wanted to identify, every single plant in here, that would be a very complex project.
Building on that question, like, how would you go about collecting ground truth for Los Altos? Because in some ways it's a chicken and egg thing. You first need to know what's out there before you decide what to survey and what to use as your ground truth. Like, how would you approach that?
So there would be two sections, with two subsets basically within the larger data set. One that we know what tree it is, count it, and use that to put into the AI. And then the other section where we know what tree it is, but we don't tell the AI, and then see how accurate the AI is. So, we fly, for example, one park where we walk the park, we're able to identify all the trees, all the different species, use that to ground truth, to add all of the, to train the AI basically. To a different section and say, hey, given the model you created from this characteristic area, how many trees are in this park? And then we're counting that by hand, and then we can actually compare and contrast computer versus human.
Got it. And then you keep going until the next section is not giving you anything that you haven't seen before.
Exactly.
You kind of say, I'm done.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. So to your point, done. From your point, it is a very complex problem if we want to identify every single species.
I was just thinking, even if you wanted to, carbon sequestration by a forest plan, trees, the oaks and the redwoods and so on, you can do that, but there's so many imported species that it becomes very complex if you want to get more data, And so the question is if you build a model, how accurate can you be in making predictions if you're only looking at a subset of the trees? Because you couldn't, my feeling is it'd be very difficult to identify all the different species of trees.
Yeah. So I think part of our mission is to accelerate the adoption of these tools. So the first adopter is always going to be have the most legwork. And so if we were to do, Portola Valley next door, I know we're not talking about Portola Valley, but a lot of those models would be applied to that area, right? And so it's a bit of, first adopter, the first iPhone is not as good as the iPhone 15, but you gotta have those that use your feedback, and it's a big push to do the first kind of an engineer.
So you're saying we need to get Mountain Dew or something back and then do it.
Why not use the time? And so that, and then additionally, it depends on the level of data, right? If you want sort of carbon atom that you're sequestering, we probably can't do that. But for really large areas, you might not say, here's every single tree and every single bit of carbon that it individually is sequestering. We look at this sort of cover type. We know that this is this type of forest. And so we know that will sequester this amount. So it's a question of sort of resolution and what scale we're looking at and what, our sig figs that we want in terms of accuracy.
One other question that I had was, even if you look at an individual species of trees, take a redwood or whatever, it changes, their growth pattern and their density, and their growth changes with what the climate change has been. And so, can this modeling accurately predict when it's, you got a redwood tree here and a redwood tree here, but they're different ages. And so but they may be the same height. And one could have a much denser hardwood rather than sapwood or whatever. And so can you really know that a tree of that height, two of them have the same carbon sequestration or view the differences?
Yeah, so with LiDAR, you're able to get diameter at rest height, which is the traditional measurement for carbon sequestration, to see, it's because that's the easiest way to measure a tree by hand. And so scientifically, that's a lot of where the data has been. But no, there's no way to know, I guess, to that really specific.
The reason why I said that, I just got back from a trip and we went to the White Mountains and saw the bristlecone pines. And you look at a bristlecone pine tree that's 4,000 years old, and, you know, I got a tree in my yard that's bigger than that, not in diameter, but in height. But so, you know, that's why I was asking the question about how, you know, you can view or how the model can accurately predict the carbon sequestration if you're really just looking at the same species and same height.
Yeah, that's something that I'm not an expert in, but we are going down to Belize and Guatemala in a few months with Sarah M. Walker, who is a WCS employee. She's also the one who's written kind of all of the verification models and published all those papers. So there are people better versed than I am in specifically kind of that part of it.
Well, it's certainly an interesting problem. I don't mean that,
Yeah.
you know, I don't mean to throw a bunch of cold water around here, but it's just interesting having, you know, it's a very difficult problem, I think. Forest coverage, you know, your canopy coverage is one question, but when you start talking about carbon sequestration, wow.
Any other question? I have a couple. What first is, well, I guess it's comment and question. I'm not gonna do that, so there's not a discussion. So I was just looking at the Los Altos tree resource analysis that was done in 2017. And according to that, there is 152, more than 152 unique species. So is that number of species something you think would be, you know, 100, 150 if you have enough?
Like I said, a lot of this is R&D, and so I'd love to, you know, try my hand at it. There's, I think, you know, with new technology, there's no guarantee, and especially when we're scoping this, it's something that I do a lot with the conservation partners, is figuring out what exactly do you need, because, you know, you can promise the moon with technology, but what actually leads to actionable data, and then how can we back that with that and say, okay, what's feasible, what makes sense in our timeline, and then
Yeah.
you know, scope the project that way.
Yeah, the other thing they said is that top three species represent 43% of the overall population. So I'm guessing if you get, you know, a top 5, 10, 15 species identified accurately, you would get a good sense of what the urban forest is made of. So that's just a question around comment around that. So some other questions around, so you said you could go over a riverbed or a creek and look for water. Now Los Altos has 5 creeks that run mountains to the bay. Would you be able to fly drones along the creek and then get a sense of, you know, is it dry at this, you know, kind of, how do you, I mean, if there's not physical water on the flowing in the creek, but it's kind of wet, would you be able to tell that?
Yes. So with LiDAR, you can, it's basically like a laser, like sonar, bounces back 500,000 times a second. And the intensity of that bounce back is what tells you things about the actual material that it's bouncing off of. So it's used a lot in construction to figure out, like, what type of roof is it, you know, shingles or is it metal? And so water is one of those materials where you can tell that. Again, there's a lot of different aspects to it, right? How much tree covers over it, what heat are we flying, how much penetration we get through that canopy. These are all kind of what we specialize in, is figuring out what's the right system to run for answering the question that you have.
So again, around the creek, so you could go around the creeks, take fly drones around the creeks, and then would you be able to kind of build a map of the creek riparian ecosystem. Even if we didn't do all of Los Altos, everything, is that something that could be done very, to some amount of detail?
Yeah, to some kind of detail with the LiDAR, you'd be able to find the topographical kind of the features of the creek, especially when it's empty. The LiDAR doesn't do very good at penetrating the water, but if we do it during a dry spell or when there's very little water in the creek, which I know we have frequently, you'd be able to map those creek beds very well.
And then you could, with whatever you were talking about, identifying species, figure out what the trees are and what they look like and.
Yeah.
Okay. And one other random thing is you said with water content, you could tell how much water a tree has. So if it's dead or drying or close to being a fire hazard, is that something that you could, if you had that map, could you say that, okay, this section is really dry or this section has a bunch of dead trees that need extra care that, you need to go clear out, or, do something for fire prevention?
Yeah, so there's some aspect of financial thing with that. So, how do we know that it's not just a tree that's lost its foliage or that it's like a normal thing that happens? But if you're able to say, these are our metrics around what a fire hazard is, and you're able to identify those in the field, and we can train on that, then finding those would be possible.
How many companies are doing this?
Very few, if not we're the only, where we specialize in, I guess, solving like a full stack solution for conservation needs.
Are there companies that are just being able to map the trees through? Okay. Are you aware of any that have done work with cities?
I don't, but I can reach out to my network and see who has.
Okay.
But there are plenty, because this type of technology is used a lot in mining, forestry, agriculture, construction, and so there are definitely, call us out to survey this area, and here's the raw data, and here's kind of a process data set, but a lot more industry specific when it comes to the processing. Whereas the industry the dollar amount for identifying how much a tree, like what species of tree is, hasn't really been set by the market because we haven't really cared. So we're in that game.
It's a real interesting technology, and doing a subset, as you were saying, is something that's feasible. I have a question. You mentioned that you're a 501c3. So what do you work off of grants or?
We are privately funded at the moment. We've looked in the last year for grants, which is challenging to say the least. There are not many in the conservation or technology realm. So we're privately funded at the moment.
So, I guess I have a question on the business model, and maybe that's not an appropriate question at this point. Because obviously, you got, pardon me?
You gonna say the question?
No, I'm asking a question. Because you got a lot of equipment, you got people ground truthing, and obviously people don't do things for free. And even if you're a 501c3, you may have staff or whatever. So the question is how do you cover your costs? And if you were to get an assignment to do a park in Los Altos or whatever, how would you look at or approach that type of request for an RFP or whatever?
Right.
Is that what you want to ask?
Right now, our donors are like small group of essentially early adopters, or people that understand the value of this technology and that the R&D process, and the fact that we're catalyzing the adoption of this. Our partners in the field are now covering costs of us going down, but the goal is to get to sort of a cover the cost of the service model, and say, okay, it's going to take our team this long to deploy. This is the cost of, flying the drone, collecting all the data, processing that data, and then providing a useful report or whatever the end product is. So essentially, it's a service model. We would charge for how much the service is. Right now, it's being subsidized by the donors based on how mission oriented it is. So we're working towards saying, let's cover all, pay for the service as it is. We're not going to make any money off of it. But as we're getting there, it's okay, pay for the flights to come down and feed us at a minimum. And then as we continue to show that this is something that's useful, that this is, these reports are actionable in the field and worth the money, then that service, gets to be a line item in their conservation work, not just, an experimental week or two.
You're a non-profit.
Yeah.
And then donor funded, you said donor funded, so yeah, that's cool.
So, it's the goal of every nonprofit to hit the break-even mark. But until then, I think our initial pool of donors is mission aligned and see the vision of this technology has to be adapted from the private sector to, serve the planet instead of just exploit it.
Any more questions? Good.
I will reach out to you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You guys, but yeah, please do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Now share your presentation to the contact info.
Sure, yeah. Would you mind shooting on? Or on maybe like a couple hours on sharing?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, yeah, we get it on your stuff, so.
I want to see the angles.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. I know you have, somebody have a slide or something like that. We'll look at that.
Yeah, that was a room I've been solo testing. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so next up is meeting minutes.
On meeting minutes, the only question I had was for Donovan's presentation. Might be helpful just to specify that he was presenting on community organization for sustainability, something to that effect, because I think right now it just says Donovan presented, someone in turn presented, and just so that if someone were to come across this in the future, like idea of what he presented on, and they're interested, finding. So that would be my one suggestion for an amendment.
Yeah. I have to approve the meeting minutes, so that the amendment. Everyone in favor? Solutions and amendments? Great, minutes are great. All right. Next, we have discussion items. That was just the one. It's an update on transportation, some of the individual commissioner research that I've been doing, and a short presentation. And I'm able to bring it up. And I think Corey will make a comment that comes after the presentation. Questions, right? It comes after the clarifications, yeah. Okay. Okay, sorry, this is not meant to, for everyone to read. I just wanted to bring it up that this is what we've said we would do in the work plan related to transportation. The second item, and then when we're asked to prioritize, we prioritized the mobility, shared mobility. And, the EV charging network, we decided that we pulled up on it because we were one commissioner short and, we had a few bunch of things to work on. So I will be putting on the first piece, of the, some of the items on the first piece of the transportation focus of the workshop. Okay. Next, again, this is not for everyone to read, just pulling in from the cap, the actions and the items that everything, each thing relates to, so we can kind of directly correlate, if someone looks at it later, what we're doing. So basically, we're reducing citywide vehicle miles traveled by 25% by 2035. That seems to be the strategy, and the rest of it was electrification. So working towards that, the two goals that this work plan this year we're looking at is to create a walkable, bikeable city and support shared mobility, which we're working towards. So not saying that we're checking the box, just I'm doing research to figure out how we can move it. So we can move on to the next. So it's a short presentation. Okay, just there's two things on reducing VMT. One is creating a walkable, bikeable city, and I've just been looking at since we were discouraged from liaising with other commissions, so it's just my private research, my independent research as opposed to working with the Complete Streets Commission. So I've looked at different cities around it, and I think I see Palo Alto as being a really good example of having had some success, especially for students walking, biking to school. I used to have, my son used to go to a middle school in Palo Alto, so I used to drive them off over there. And on the way back, it was school time, and there would be these trains of bicycles just going towards the schools. So definitely very different from what we see in Los Altos. So my goal for this is next to talk to the transportation director in Palo Alto. I think they recently hired the one from Mountain View to see what their plans are, how they're, so they actually over the last, I think this years go from early 2000s, 2010 to current. So kind of and we saw number of bikes parked at school. So counting how many kids came to school via bike. So it's kind of gone up. I'm looking at the bottom graph, sorry. It's gone up. It's kind of coming down a little bit the last couple of years versus the pandemic, but they are still at about 40% of the kids in the high school bike to school. And then I think 60% total walk or bike, which is again very different from what we see given all the congestion and transportation issues around the high school. And that's kind of a 2019 snapshot of how different kids get to school. So my goal is to just meet with the new transportation director and learn a little bit more about what they're doing. I've read the reports, and they have a lot of education, similar to what we have, but I think a lot more focused. And they do have a designated budget for safe routes to school, which is a significant amount of budget to have it listed there. So that's just on the walkable, bikeable city end. And then we do have the new projected bike lane around El Camino. I haven't yet seen a whole lot of people biking it, but starting to see a few. So I think that should help. All right. And then in terms of shared mobility, that should be the next one. This is let's see. So that's the other way to reduce vehicle miles traveled. If people took a bus, or carpool or took a shuttle. Los Altos has minimal public transit. There are no train stops. There are very few disconnected VTA bus routes, and it's not even part of some other rideshare programs like the RIDE program that offers rides to seniors in most of Santa Clara. Santa Clara County. And this is just a map from the VTA of, asking them, how could I get from South Los Altos to the community center? And it takes a minimum of an hour, well, if I'm walking very fast. And 2 to 3 bus rides if I'm trying to take transit. So just an example of, it's not ideal yet at this point. So just looking at what the neighboring cities are doing, Mountain View has 2 shuttle systems. There is the Mountain View Community Shuttle, which used to be funded by Google, but last year they stopped funding it. Now the city's funding it. And they have 2 routes that run around the city from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Or some such. And then they have another route which is run by a nonprofit. It's Mountain View Go, that runs shuttles connecting them from the transit stops and intersecting with the community shuttle. So there are 2 different systems, and the city of Mountain View kind of manages them all. And I have talked to I have talked to a couple of people in Mountain View, and I have a few more meetings set up to learn more about how, what kind of logistics, budget, all that stuff. And then I talked to people in Palo Alto Transportation Department. They used to have a shuttle service, which they discontinued during the pandemic, and then didn't have funding to bring it back up. But they're piloting a microflex shuttle system, which is you can call a shuttle. It is free. No, it's $2 or $4 depending on whether you're a senior or not, something like that. But you call it and then they route it so that 40% of the time you have more than one person taking the shuttle going from curb to curb. So it won't be, doorstep to doorstep, but you have to walk to your nearest intersection and then they'll take you to wherever you're going, general mall or doctor's office or downtown. If you're a disabled or a senior, then they'll do get the door. So they got funding from the state budget to do to pilot it, and I think they're in their 3rd year. They have 9 vehicles. They'd say they're fairly well used. But again, funding is an issue. That we'll see if it continues, if they can continue it once this state funding runs out. Cupertino, Saratoga, and Sunnyvale are also piloting similar things, and Cupertino and Saratoga. One of the 2 cities has a combined thing where they do shuttle service. I can say similar, you call in and then they figure out a route that tries to carpool. Most Santa Clara cities have ride services, which I mentioned. San Mateo County has a commute shuttles for several of their cities, most of them actually. I think Atherton and a couple others don't, where they have routes that run from the train station or major bus stops to different parts of town. So several of the cities around us have something around shared mobility. Next week. All right, so what we're looking at, or I'm looking at the moment, and hopefully the city will be looking at more, is community shuttle proposals, the downtown vision proposals, a trolley that goes in circle from South Los Altos all the way out and back around. And then Chloe here has been running a survey and going to different commissions and council and trying to get support for a community shuttle. Thank you, Chloe. It's been very helpful. You did a community. It's okay for me to ask her questions since she's here. Around the line.
Yeah, I think she can.
So you did a survey, a small survey within parents. Right.
Parents at my martial arts school.
Yeah. And there was support for having a shuttle, I'm guessing. Okay, and then she actually went and we chatted a couple times. She went and looked at the Mountain View system and found a a program that maps shuttle, you can map routes and just, pulled out created a couple of routes that connect with the Mountain View shuttle system, etc. So there are ways, and I think, when you do your comment, we can talk a little bit more about what you're hoping to achieve with the shuttle route that you're proposing. But where I'm going is that Chloe's been at it and she's been really helping us spread the word and getting some interest. And she was there at the last, not this week, but the previous council study session. And I think Mayor Daley, I know that Mayor Daley asked for a study session on shuttles to see if a community shuttle program might be good for Los Altos. So that's good news in terms of traction. What my plan is to, complete my discussions and research and see what other cities are doing with their mobility, just get a sense of what's working, what's not. And then from the Environmental Commission point of view, or my research point of view, what we would propose for Los Altos, that would be going with the cap. So that's kind of where we are. I'm hoping that next month I'll have that. Question?
You mentioned there's a state funding for this kind of so we have not been using it.
I don't know. Several cities have their flex shuttles that they come from that funding. And there's also several other organizations that fund transportation. Mountain View Shuttle, they had a grant from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. We have a couple other grants. So there were funding opportunities for transportation programs, which not all be available, but the state does still have funding.
Question for Mountain View's program are the drivers city staff? City staff?
So they hired a company with an RFP, and they hired a company. I talked to the person who represents that company at Mountain View. And so it's something about We Drive View. She said there's a few other companies that do this. They provide the buses if needed, or the city. The city currently, Mountain View has their buses are leased. They lease their buses themselves, but they hire the drivers and they manage that whole system. So the city doesn't manage it directly. And I think Palo Alto uses a different person, different group, somewhere that manages the drivers for the routes. What both of them are saying is that there's just a few drivers that are really good because they're trained, etc., and they run the same routes. They get to know most of the people who are riding the shuttles or taking rides, especially the seniors, and they say it feels really good. From what I've heard from a couple of anecdotal people, that it feels really good. You get on the shuttle and then the driver kind of knows you, especially if you're a frequent user. So and they're definitely safer than taking Uber, etc. Well, I don't know definitely, but they appear to be safer.
Did you get an idea of the cost?
Yeah, that's my next one. For Mountain View, it costs them. For Palo Alto to run their flex program with the 9 people, it costs them $85,000 to $150,000 a month. For their flex rideshare program. They get their cars from another company that provides the cars and runs them, and that also provides the drivers.
Electric vehicles?
I don't think so. Well, there might be. I don't know. I didn't ask for for Mountain View. They're actually they are not electric at this time. They've ordered It's new electrical hybrid on shuttles. They're gonna test them out, modules. So they're not yet, electric. So they have to figure out if they can run the routes, continuously from morning to evening without having to go out of service for charging.
I know that senior people actually, they get reimbursed. If they need a right to see doctors or go do something, they actually get reimbursed. And it's a direct right. And sometimes I'm just thinking, you know, if I'm 80-year-old and I want to see my doctor, I don't want to delay. The shuttle make many stops, which means I need to be on the shuttle way before. And, you know, if I get reimbursed, get a private ride, I would choose that. Why not? I think that not just the doctor,
Well, that's, is that a question or discussion?
no, I'm just commenting. I'm just commenting
that's
because I
fine.
do have
That's full
senior neighbors.
So is it free? Is the shuttle free?
Doctor is free.
It's free. Okay.
No question.
Yeah, I want to
Yeah, all right.
about
I can stick to questions.
the map on the end. Is that what is, can we read into that? Or what's the level of detail? Is that a draft on the left side? Put that in green lines.
There's only, that, I can share, that Corey found for, what's it called? It's quick. Metro Dreaming. What's a website? It's a website.
Metro Dreaming. Metro Dreaming.
So, I mean, yeah, there's, I'm sure there's multiple ways of figuring out routes and especially now with AI. But yeah, it's looked like a pretty good one.
Okay.
Well, I was curious if there was a queue. It looks like there's diamonds and then there's circles. Is that meant to be hubs and stops, or what's the? Is there a differentiation there? Okay.
Question. No, so if I took this as a screenshot from the website, and they show, I think the diamonds are shuttles moving, because they move around.
Sure.
So maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
What's the website?
Metro Dreaming. Okay.
Okay.
I have a question on 10.1, and we need to go back.
This one,
Sorry,
right?
the bike ride stuff. My question was, I just needed to refer to the exact term. Yes, I have two questions. So some dropped in walk bike in recent years. I can't remember whether you said there was a hypothesis and why that was.
I read the reports, and since the pandemic, they have not completely funded some of the outreach programs with schools are different. So they work with parent groups, to teach, to train, to educate, students and parents. I think there's been a drop in that, but beyond that, they don't know, I think.
Safe biking courses that happen in school. Okay. And the second question was, you're saying nearly 60% walk or bike to school. Do we know how Los Altos compares to other neighboring areas?
I don't know if you have that data. I know for a fact that it's much less. I'm not sure. Yeah.
You know, can you expand on that?
Just from when you go to a school, the number of bikes versus the number of cars if you go to the high school.
Do you have a hypothesis based on your research as to where that might be?
Not yet. No, I will. No. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't have enough up with that, I'm sure.
Definitely, I know. In my neighborhood, once they have the bike lane, I think that's the conclusion.
Is that a question or?
I'm just saying the explanation.
Or really?
We're seeing more people ride bike, the kids, because the bike lane are marked very well. That actually increase why they choose to bike to school.
Can imagine.
If there's no other clarifying questions, any public comments on items on the agenda on this item? Okay. Why don't you just speak from here so that they can see in these cameras?
Hi, good evening, guys. My name is Chloe. I did the route on the other side. I just want to clarify about the diamonds versus circles.
Okay,
So the green route, was a bike train route that I, also designed. And so I think the diamonds are just the intersections between, the red route and the green route. And the circles, are stops. Cool. And then also about the reimbursement for the elders. So yeah, I read about that in the town crier, basically like the ride care program. They're considering installing like a limit for that soon because there is so much demand. And so I think it'd be really worthwhile to like get a shuttle system because, if they're gonna need to have that limit anyways, in terms of, because of the city's budget, that can allow for, more urgent trips. We should keep the ride care system with that limit so that more urgent trips can use that direct method of getting to hospitals. And then we can still keep a shuttle that will like serve like the broader population of Los Santos. And so in terms of my general goals for why we really need a community shuttle is because we need a more direct route to Caltrain, as well as a connection to Rancho San Antonio from North Los Santos, and also have some stops closer together within downtown Los Santos to like support elderly and also make it easier for kids who may live a little bit further than just like biking to be able to get downtown without needing parents or anything. So yeah, with that, I think the shuttle should have bike racks. I think as just like the Mountain View shuttle does. So anyone within a 5-minute bike ride or walk in North Los Santos can easily connect to it. These can also help during events. I know that there's already like shuttles that are ran during some events in some areas that connect like within parking lots, but it'd be so convenient if it was, ran a more general route during those events. And yeah, I mean, I think if we can just start with like 30-minute frequency right now, maybe change up the route for weekend service so that's a little bit more direct and skips. It doesn't necessarily need to go to schools, which is my plan for the weekdays. It'd be really efficient and help a lot of the Los Santos population.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no, please.
I'm not allowed to ask her questions, right? Because she's going public comment. That's
You can ask simple questions, yeah. You are allowed to,
You mentioned the green bike road.
we can pull that, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I've seen that.
Sorry, I said that, I didn't make a mental note of that during your presentation, but what, can you explain briefly what that is?
Yeah, so alongside having a community shuttle, it was a concept I was working with Safe Routes Los Santos to plan like a bike train because I know that Greentown also has they encourage for parents to plan these bike trains. I know that like Loyola has one just for their school. I think it'd be cool if, I mean, honestly, it was the first draft. So I think it's like the entire route was like 8 miles. It would allow kids from all like the North Los Santos schools to get in the line of bikes and go around so that they can each drop off at their like respective schools. Yeah, it's just a way so that they have like increased visibility and have the chance to bike together safely with their parents.
It's kind of like a peloton for school kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Thanks.
I'm curious, you've heard from people in Southwest office, like what need they might have, or if there's enough demand to support something between North and Southwest office.
Yeah, I think it's just difficult because it's really like spread out down there. I mean, it's like really like skinny versus like Northwest South is a lot bulkier. But And I think it makes sense because like downtown is a bit more central than Rancho, that we focus most of the way up there. But I think still just going along, Fremont Avenue down there, should be a good start.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, not gonna discuss. I have another question. I heard that Adobe, the company, have using on the shuttle or something like that. Business anyone else doing that?
But they're in downtown San Jose,
Adobe
Adobe, yes,
or
the headquarters.
Um,
The one that comes out of the stuff.
Yeah, the founders of.
there's some company, not using the name, that had planned a shuttle for their employees here in Los Altos.
Oh,
The reason I'm asking is if there is something like that already, we can maybe see how we can partner on that.
Yeah, so Mountain View has a lot of that, right? Because Google and all the other companies have run their shuttle.
There's the
There's Palo Alto. I don't know if we have, do we have any major company in Los Altos? That would, we need to bus people over, or is it the employees that are here at the bus else?
I'm not sure about the specifics, but I know that someone working at the city mentioned that.
It'd be good to know what's,
Yeah, but there used to be that.
well, that discussion, I'll try to not ends up being, you know. Yeah. So there's. Yeah, so there's a few different things that connect Sunnyvale, train station and Mountain View train station to some, you know, a couple different places in Mountain View. And, I don't know if they have any. I think they don't have any anymore in Palo Alto shuttle systems, which they used to. But I think that there's a lot of. I've seen a lot of. A lot of other cities are doing it, having the shuttles, especially in San Mateo County with their SamTrans system. I don't know where they get the funding from, but most of the cities have those kind of shuttles. So, that connect their train station to a few different places in the city. So that's. If we could, I don't know, it's a discussion I'm just going on with my presentation. But what I was saying is that, you know, I think there is, potential for partnering with Palo Alto and Mountain View and seeing if we can connect the shuttles or the services, ride service, to go from beyond just, you know, their borders, our borders. We might be able to get connection with public transit. As well as other major hubs that people come and go from.
ask a question. What are you hoping to get from the commission at this stage? Because obviously there's a lot of different topics there. Do you
Feedback
feedback
on
where to focus?
where to focus, what to, you know, so there's. Most of the cities are now going towards that used to have shuttles before the pandemic. Don't have shuttles anymore except for Mountain View. Probably the reason for Mountain View still having no shuttle is that Google funded it for a while. And now it's well used. So the city, feels that they should continue funding it. Several of the other cities, have started these microflex, like, shuttles, which from a vehicle miles travel point of view, I don't know, because, you know, they're still usually picking up 1 or 2 or 3 people and taking them somewhere, so not so much of a VMT reduction. But I'm just looking for guidance on what, you know, if there's a direction of focus on weeks of research. And then what we might think we might want to, what people would support, commissioners would support, for us to propose to council.
You don't want to bias us, because I would love to hear your view on like where you think We've done the research. but
Yeah,
I think
Yeah,
we
I know, like, as I'm doing more research, I'm just learning pros and cons. So I don't think I have enough data yet to be complete about it. I feel that, yes, a shuttle, given the shape of, a city, would be, how little public transport there is, I think.
Yeah.
And there is some streets that, go back and forth. So it may not be that long or difficult of a route. So I feel like some public shuttle would be good that runs at a certain time. But maybe there's a mix that needs to happen, because we have so many seniors doing,
Well, the suggestion for your research, your expansion would be, I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Tanya, isn't the largest employer in the city, the school districts? Well, I suspect that if it isn't the largest, it's certainly one of the most significant. So, serving that population, for example, we're down in Distal Circle, they're building subsidized housing for teachers. Integrating how to get the employees of the school district to where they have to go from where they are within the city may be a way to focus on where your ridership might come from. Certainly, and we don't have school buses here. But again, that's a source of getting people to the schools, and it seems like that may be one of the most significant uses that you may have for ridership numbers, if you will. I'm not downplaying the people that have to get to El Camino Hospital or their doctors or anything like that, but number of ridership, you may want to think about that. Where's your ridership, and where do those people go from point A to point B?
So I'm thinking before something like this happens, might need to do a formal survey. To understand the needs, or do definitely some outreach sessions to understand where people are coming from and going to.
And yeah, I think that would be like said to council and through the recommendation, the one at the end of the year.
Although I'm suggesting that may be a starting point to expand your thought process on this.
Wherever we have, the high density housing, we should be connecting those areas. But I'm also thinking a lot of times there might be people going downtown for lunch, or there might be special shuttles that run for all the lava events that happen in downtown. But then there's also people who may want to come to the community center to take some of the classes that happen there during the daytime. So and that may be during the day. So there might be different uses of the shuttle at different times. I don't know how. There's better people than I have more experience at doing the logistics for things like that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But
definitely understanding who would take the shuttle.
And the surveys, we give that some thought and may help you focus your presentation or suggestion.
Yeah, I kind of echo that feedback, but also I like 1.2 as a focus area for the reasons you already outlined. I do have a concern on 1.1. Could you just go back to the slide quickly? So I do worry a little bit about participation for cycling, especially the school kids, now that we passed this rule that school kids need to wear a helmet. Because there's a lot of research out there that shows that when we do this, participation drops quite significantly. So between 15 and 30%. And obviously I'm not going to pretend like there's not a complex relationship between safety and participation, but I am very sympathetic that more needs to be done here.
Mhm.
I almost feel like there's a negative, with all the local press that's been getting, there's a negative sentiment around kids riding bikes at the moment, probably driven by those high-speed electric bikes we see downtown. And I do worry that that's rubbing off on cyclists as well. So I was cycling into downtown the other day, actually. This has happened now a couple of times, and I had someone shout at me for not wearing a helmet
Mhm.
in a pretty aggressive way. And so I feel like there's cyclists are in for a bit of a hard time at the moment in the city.
Mhm.
And so I think as a commission, anything that we can do or propose to make cycling more attractive, given all the inherent disadvantages there are in a car-centric town,
Mhm.
especially around safety. And so I think this one also deserves a,
Mhm.
because, you know, obviously from the commission's perspective, or from my perspective, you know, walk miles and bike miles are the best miles because they're carbon free,
Mhm.
avoid more and all the food we need to eat afterwards because we're starving. So yeah, that's probably my feedback. And then finally, I think as I heard that, I saw yesterday that we nominated a new commissioner, so hopefully they'll also turn up there, not like last time. And I think it's probably start time thinking about maybe taking this body of research and making it into maybe a working path or
Mhm.
so basically out of individual research.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think it depends a little bit on council's asked, so it's, you know, we would have pushed it, but now council's going to put it as a study session at some point.
Mhm.
We'll probably want to have as much as input as we can ahead of that.
Mhm.
From a cat environmental standpoint. But yeah, so we want to do something soon, and then maybe there'll be more as that happens. I'll check maybe subcommittee or whatever else. On the bike piece, what, Chloe had suggested with, trains,
Mhm.
I think are great, because that's kind of what I've seen in Palo Alto, because there's so many kids going to school, they're just like a buck train. Or, you know, drivers just need to know, okay. Yeah, they want to show it. It's very slowly, so there is, yeah, so there's that safety. So that kind of, I think more, I don't know how, because it's Palo Alto's right next door. It's not as if the demographics are that different, or the distances to the different schools are that much. We need to think a little bit as to why that culture is so different in terms of, walking, biking to school versus here.
Just a follow-up question to the statistic you provided, why is that? Why is that the case with the helmets?
I
Just
don't
because it's
know.
like another thing to do.
Yeah, but it's quite well reproduced
Yes.
in like several areas. I think it's just more of an optics thing. It's not cool to wear a helmet, personally. And also, I don't know. And I would wear a helmet.
We have a representative, can we ask her?
You should.
The reason I don't, the reason I don't wear a helmet is because I grew up in countries where it's a cultural norm not to wear a helmet, not to have to wear a helmet. So.
I personally had biking accident, if not for the helmet. I wouldn't hit it.
Mm.
And I feel school should have education for all the kids about biking safety and helmet, because it's so important. You don't know when anything is going to happen.
How much required for
Yes,
kids?
it's required. It's required.
You know, if I don't know, my kids have always worn helmets, just automatically.
No.
Maybe because
So
of
what do
the
you
shoulder in the house.
So I'm hearing, some ideas for this is make cycling more fun and cool. And then I'm hearing, trying to understand why a city like Palo Alto has more people cycling than Los Altos. And then maybe that's going to help inform some of our recommendations.
Those
Because
what,
our goal is to increase biking.
I think there was one other follow-on question, which is sort of a missing piece of data. Is there data from the school districts on the percentage of walking and biking? So that there is some sort of comparison. There may or may not be, but I think that's a question that if you need to know the answer to. There isn't the data, or there is the data, or the data doesn't have any confidence, whatever it is.
Yeah. Maybe we can get drones. That, I have a question about the survey where they were, getting that data actually. Do you know how they did that?
Oh, this data, they actually rigorously measure the number of bikes on the routes in the schools, all the schools, and they have data for, let's say, yeah, it's pretty, if they have data for all the schools, then see which schools don't know that. So, and they're spending money on it, so that's the other piece that, all of this makes a difference, so there is budget for it, and more intentional outreach, etc.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece of the puzzle, is getting the data to see. Which,
So it's 25 to 50%. There's an article that I can send around, I can send to you and you can forward it.
Well, okay.
Now around cycling usage,
That's fine.
fallen, or as a deterrent for cycling when helmet usage is not.
Is it in areas that are generally not using helmet? Or is it?
It cherry picked a little bit. I don't need to read the study in detail, but I'll forward it so that everyone, if they want to.
which would not be that hard to try to do like a campaign on helmets being cool. And something like that on social media. Wouldn't be a costly, would be an easier recommendation.
Because helmets are cool, I don't know about, we may need some influencers.
Yeah,
To model it for.
I don't know if it's just the coolness, because I think part of it is when you're putting on a helmet, you think I'm doing a dangerous activity. And there's a certain psychology around that. I couldn't get what you're saying about. I mean, I do wear a helmet when I go on longer bike rides. I just don't find moving downtown.
Yeah, so maybe it's. Obviously, you can't say. Like, we shouldn't be asking, we shouldn't be requiring the kids to wear helmets. I think the way how can the city make it safer, or for people to feel safer.
When you roller skate, they were how many kids. I mean, there are a few sports where the kids does it, they wear helmets. Yeah.
There was a technology video I saw years ago where someone developed this sort of helmet that is basically just a collar, and then it, as you get into the ground, it pops out and is able to protect you. I don't know if it ever got greenlit. I remember there being all this discussion about Europe being more friendly for that type of pad cloth. Anyway.
There was at 2 years, the first EV fair, there was somebody who was selling these really nice looking helmets for women. That, so it's actually kind of cool to wear one that doesn't look like a helmet, looks like a hat. So, I mean, there's people doing things. I guess maybe a survey, more surveys, or, yeah.
So California law is cyclists under the age of 18 are required to wear.
Yeah, so
It's just for e-bikes.
e-bikes.
Cycle says bike riders under a certain age need to wear helmets, adults do not. E-bikes is a new thing in Los Altos under a certain age. I'm not sure whether it's 17 or 18.
But e-bikes are people.
I'm not sure if that's part of that, it's being debated by city council.
Yeah, it can run to 28 miles an hour.
Right, so it can be at least a bike.
It's fun.
So.
That is far.
Oh.
Awesome, I can go on bike.
Okay.
Some comments on the shuttle service. Yeah, I think the connection to Caltrain would be great. I believe right now you have to take 2 buses to go from that stop closest to the downtown. So yeah, that would definitely be a good admission reduction. And then the reason I was asking the question about Southwest Office is, yeah, right now, if you want to get to Northwest Office on the weekend, you either have to go in a car, Uber, or you walk an hour and a half. So
You can bike.
You could bike, but, you know, some of us don't find that really safe going along, yeah, the cars there, so there's that. So I think in terms of an initial reduction for Los Altos, I think having that connection would be really valuable, especially with how much, you know, more investment is going into this area right now, especially, so. Yeah. And, yeah, Veteran Rancho also sounds very valuable, you know. If somebody wants to go with me, we're having to take a car and go to parking, but most people aren't gonna wanna walk all the way in there, so. Yeah, I think that would be the high quality.
As a non-resident, I also support there being connection to Caltrain so that it can maybe possible. More possible.
And it also has a safety impact, right? Like I went to a baseball game with friends and we said, okay, let's take a car on the way there, but we're going to be having a few drinks. We'll get an Uber back from San Francisco because coming back to the Caltrain and then driving a car that you let one is not an option or shouldn't be an option. But it's not just
Many reasons to have options. Incentives for people who have not been in the park. Yeah. All right, so I will take that into, do some more research, and hopefully come up with something that we can look at. And if you feel it's not ready, you can work before we talk to council or send to council. But I'm hoping to have at least something a little more concrete, that we can say, okay, this is what, and then we can discuss it. This is what we as the Environmental Commission would propose if we were doing, I mean, not if, but we would propose how we do. Especially if we're looking into like streets and. Okay. Okay. Yes. Of course, it would be short. We have staff updates. Reports from council meetings.
Am I the first one of the two? I mean, 24, I want to say.
you must be this one
All right.
First,
The 9th is, yes, September 9th is,
I hope you have
Yeah,
one of this, right?
September 30th is Commissioner Heft.
Oh, I had one in the end of August.
Sorry, what am I?
Yeah, I should have just started.
Is the TV.
That was the.
Right. Right, so I have 6 things here to mention. There was an item on there about dog parks that did relate to art funds, which is, Rashina and both individually commented at the Parks Commission meeting on that. I commented at this meeting as an individual for the city council, knowing that it was not related, but knowing that there were other people that are there to comment on artificial turf. So there were many public comments on that. Ultimately, they ended the session with Weinberg wanting to look into alternatives. Lang and Flygor both supported that motion. Meadows mentioned not wanting to go back on previous votes, so that being the justification for not looking to do it. Daly mentioned that he thought it might mean a year of delays. Weinberg said he doesn't think that. So I don't know. Maybe Phil already has an update on that, but that's where that was left at 8/24. Library design was brought up, and electrification was something that a bunch of people made a public comment on. And the one that really stuck out was just saying, okay, they mentioned that there's going to be electrification, but it would be great if we had some detail on what that exactly looks like. Because the presentation basically just said, yes, we're going to be electrifying. And the council agreed, yeah, it'd be nice to have some transparency about what are we talking about exactly. There was a mention of the Grant Homestead project of road improvements, and I believe that was Weinberg said they're in conflict with BTA staff. Mayor Daly also responded to public comments on the shuttle, commented about the value of having that service connection between downtown and Caltrain specifically was the one that he called out. There was one mention of this capital implementation officer's role that was mentioned in the papers. And then the most interesting I'm gonna do is just, Lane, visited the Diablo Canyon plant, which is responsible for a percentage of our carbon-free electricity generation. And recommended people go there, see that, so. That's it. Must go, you should know if I missed anything, but.
Yeah, I listened to that meeting as well. I think I think it's a good example of showing up in numbers and then council saying, okay, let's at least talk about it. In the end.
Cool, good job. The one yesterday was very short, thankfully, because I only had half an hour today to work. That was exactly how long I needed. There actually wasn't anything on the agenda that was discussed that I think was environmental related. Apart from the new environmental commissioner being appointed. So hopefully they show up. You're watching this video, looking forward to seeing them.
So I think the person that was appointed is a volunteer in town and fairly involved.
Yeah, I mean, I can say the name, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a public.
And I gathered from public comment that, is it he or she? I'm not sure.
From.
They made,
The right person.
public comment he made that he's, with also a volunteer for Greentown, Los Altos. So,
Been recognized, I think, in the town, volunteering now, so.
okay, cool.
Looking forward to having.
Yeah,
The junior.
exactly. The June
Julie.
is what I'm probably butchering it as. There were a couple of public comments for items not on the agenda, written ones that I also read through. There were several on the Hilton Dog Park. Just saying, as we discuss future agenda items, may be relevant. And there were a couple on the library renovation project, similar feedback on electrification details not being clear. I also took the liberty of watching the Los Altos Community Coalition meetings. It was referred to in public comment. And there are questions also asked about solar PV and why it's not included in the remodeling.
Solar also came up during this other.
Or what?
Why are we not considering solar for the library remodeling, despite the fact that a lot of the local buildings also publicly owned do. So, yeah, that was it.
I also listened to that, just because I wanted to know really getting the commission on that. I think there was another idea at this meeting on the previous one that talked about demolishing a demo permit for something. And I was wanting to find out if that demo is going to be the deconstruction or a demo. I'll have to go back and look at what that project was. But they awarded a contract to a company to do the demolition of the site that Garden House.
Really, that was a timing on that? That's the little caretaker house in Halsey next to Redwood Road.
It's in that one.
It wasn't a town fire.
Yeah. The track.
So at one of the meetings, was the issue that we talked about at the last meeting, I think. When I've been out of town, so maybe I read it in the Town Crier or something, but the thing that brought up about the AC to heat pumps and that was that taken up by council at one of these last two to include that with the update for the codes.
But that hasn't been taken into account yet.
That hasn't been taken to council. Okay, that's what I was wondering if that was taken to council yet.
No, not yet. October 14th is the plan.
Good segue into staff updates.
Huh?
Good segue into staff updates.
Well, you still have your roundtable update.
Oh,
If you have any. With anything about your projects, no discussion, just updates. I have one, I took my son to, Los Angeles for college tours and I actually did a drive up to Altadena, which was severely impacted by the fires. And we had mentioned, there was one lane over there, that they call Christmas tree lane, that's planted with, deodar cedars. And there was an article up in some newspaper a while ago about how that lane wasn't impacted, so I actually did a drive up that lane. And it is remarkable, almost unbelievable. If you drive up that lane, it's thriving, it's green, the houses around, and then just one lane over is completely burned out. So while you hear a lot about when fire prevention, we hear a lot about, well, we need to clear vegetation around buildings and things like that, where, that's what causes fires or that helps them spread. So I think this was an incredible example. I was just blown away about how vegetation can actually protect against a fire. So just wanted to share that. I took a bunch of pictures, and we can have a little session where I share a little update on that. At one of the next meetings. It was just unbelievable, very depressing to see that loss. But also very uplifting.
Just gonna share two somewhat related things to them. First, on the recent report that Santa Clara County and Sunnyvale, I want to say, is the city, they're going to be spraying pesticides to control mosquitoes. So that's just a very close example to the sort of thing that we're trying to address here, prevent that sort of outbreak that's so close to us. And then the second thing being that Mountain View's biodiversity plans draft is supposed to come out on the 29th of this month. So I'll probably propose something related to that when we get to next month's agenda item.
Yeah, I could give an update. A couple of things. We spoke with is it Deputy Director of Development Services on the building electrification or FASTA. I actually got let into this meeting a bit late, so I'm leaning on your notes here, and I might ask you to give your edification. But basically, there's a desire to refer to it instead of as a bonus file, just due to legal implications. There's a preference from staff to specify an amount, like 500 feet extra wall space rather than a percentage, I assume, just because it makes it easier to administer. We did discuss the environmental impact and made, bearing in mind the research that Tom and I had done, and we kind of stood behind that. I do not believe that, based on feedback, that Los Altos has ever had a file bonus, so this would be something new for the city. We did talk about Mountain View having something similar. The process one is a bit more interesting because the feedback was that this needs to be put into the zoning code, and therefore it would have to go to the planning commission before going to city council. We did have a discussion with Councilmember Flygel about this just before this meeting. And she said technically that's not necessary, but it is a good idea to follow that recommendation that the city staff made. And so her recommendation was actually to do it this way. Tom and I still are debating whether it's better to make this more of a two-step process. To first kind of have more of a working session with the planning commission where we get all of their concerns and their feedback, and then go back to them in the second session to maybe approve something. And so Tanya will probably be working with you and to try and get some time on the planning commission's agenda And Councilmember Fycross said that there's a process for this, and this should be straightforward. So yeah, that's the feedback. That's kind of where we are with the building electrification stuff. Is there anything you wanted to add on that? 'Cause I know you've been involved.
No, just, there's a lot of things going on with building electrification, so one of them is an incentive type measure for FAR to increase FAR, so. We're just trying to figure out, we're doing the research and then figuring out what we need to know before making it as like a formal recommendation.
Can we ask questions?
Clarifying questions are always okay.
Clarifying question on
Clarifying question, a simple question.
the work with the commission, the work on building electrification, are the incentives also being advanced in your discussions?
You mean,
It's asking about the
Direct
direct
incentives.
yes,
Still going on, I mean,
yes. And maybe you can give that in yourself, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, they happen. Any other clarifying questions? Cool.
I don't have an update on the deconstruction. It's my roadway project, but hopefully it's.
So, updates. We can already talk about the new commissioner. I'm not sure what month they'll be starting, but yes, they've been selected. Hopefully in October. And then also in October, we'll change the chair and the vice chair. So today is Chair Mine's last full meeting that she's chairing, and so next meeting, at the beginning of the meeting, we'll do the handoff, and the way we've been doing it, and I think in the handbook as well, is just handing it off to the vice chair, if the vice chair would like to do that, and then voting on who the new vice chair would be. So just keep that in mind for next month. And then, also, I just want, we moved on pretty quickly from the council assignments, but for September 30th, it's Commissioner Hecht, and October 14th, it's Chair Mine of the next council meetings. Project stuff. So, there's a lot of good stuff on the books right now. So going down the list, with the urban forest master plan, we're moving forward with creating the RFP. So, that the deputy director and the director / assistant manager kind of reviewed the commission's recommendations, and then I did reach out to Mountain View for them to send me their stuff and look any quotes that they got. So hopefully we'll get, when we put the RFP together, we will get some bids within budget, but I'm not sure what's gonna happen after that. I don't know what that's gonna look like, but for now, just focusing on creating the RFP, and then we'll put it out for bid and do that whole process. For building electrification, like Commissioner Nee said, we've been working on the FBR variances, so that consists of like meeting staff and then getting data and analyzing data and all that stuff. And then for the 75K direct rebate incentives, we're figuring out, I'm waiting for the working group to provide me some direction on which appliances we want to fund, and also I'm talking to SBCE to see if they can hand that handle that administratively, by stacking the rebates onto their, rebates they already have to get a bigger rebate and, at one time, and it's less work for the residents and staff as well. We're for the speaker series. So there's the building electrification speakers series. So mark your calendars. The first one is going to be October 22nd. And we're going to start doing like our media campaign for that. It's going to be virtual, and it'll be Electrification 101. And again, Aptera is helping us plan and manage that.
So start.
6 p.m. And once they're finalizing the flyers and everything, I'll send that out to everyone to help promote the event. Bridge codes are also happening. That's big. So the 2025 building code amendment, as we presented in our last meeting, is coming up, and we're planning to take that in October, along with the local amendment. So we're working on the staff reports, editing the ordinances, getting all the supporting documents for that. So that is a big undertaking right now. What else do we? We're still working on the EV charging project at MSC, to get EV chargers there. And, yes, there's also the building electrification, like educational flyers, that we're working on through SBC. They're kind of helping us with that. I think that's, the bulk of what's going on.
A clarifying question on the RFP. If it turns out that, say, something like what Hunter was saying that they could do, turns out to be something that the city might be interested, or I think that's a question, might be interested in for part of the urban forest mapping analysis. Is that something that the city would split from the bigger RFP?
Like 2 different RFPs, basically.
I don't know if, is it, I mean, does one company have to do the whole thing? Or could the city hire someone else to do, say, the forest mapping?
Usually, I think with like CAP projects, which are big construction projects, like you'll hire a main contractor and then they'll have sub-consultants. For a plan like this, I'm not sure. So I'm not sure how that would all work. So I'd have to get clarification. I'm not sure if we've ever kind of done something like this either. So yeah, I can have to ask and see. And yeah, I want to review what Mountain View comes out with as well to see if they had any of that, those elements of mapping. So a little bit more research I need to do on that. Question.
Next would be future agenda items.
One of the lines of what I was saying, if it's possible to have a representative from Mountain View to present after that draft comes out, that'd be great. If not, I would be happy to make some small presentation, giving some sort of analysis or just highlighting their plan to try to see what might be we could learn from for the development of Los Altos.
Okay, you mean like post RFP or?
I'm just saying for next meeting,
Okay.
to see what learnings there are from that. I don't know. Depending on
There a summary of the Mountain View.
yeah, and if the RFP hasn't gone out by then, which you have to tell us what you think the timing is, but if it's not gone out yet, then it might be beneficial for that, so.
Are you referencing anything from Palo Alto?
I'm working with the higher level objectives that the commission provided.
Okay.
Yeah. So essentially, we wanna hire someone with our high level objective of what we wanna do, and they're gonna come back and give us more of the specifics as how I imagine it and I understand it to be. I think the biggest thing is gonna be the mapping and community engagement,
Right.
especially with biodiversity in the mix. So,
Then last time, Colin had you proposed talking about turf.
real quick,
Yeah.
before,
Oh, okay.
what, can you do some summarize
Isn't there a staff update on that?
on what?
The turf?
I think, thanks for reminding me on that. It's not a staff update as much as I think the council is gonna be discussing that element, which is why the commission needs to hold off on discussing it.
Okay. Is there a date on that discussion?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what the,
The artificial turf was put out as a potential agenda item last week. But city council is gonna be discussing that, so in order to not be in conflict with them, it would be something that the commission can discuss.
this is the dog park astroturf
So, yeah, general artificial. turf.
Yeah, so
or general, in general, or.
we had put a general discussion on artificial turf. And then we had actually, at our agenda setting meeting, decided that that should be something we talk about,
Mhm.
so that we can talk about it. But it was taken out for recommendation from staff. Yeah, right, city manager. So I would still like to keep that as a future agenda item. The reason again being is that especially if council might be discussing it.
Yeah, we're not taking it off the agenda.
Yeah, okay,
We're
okay.
not taking it off the potential
Okay.
agenda item list, it's just like.
Okay, still,
The commission
yeah.
can't discuss it yet.
yeah, we still, as a role of the environmental commission, I think it would be our duty to discuss it, so we can provide input to the council. But yeah, we'll defer to the guidance from the city manager on that.
And there's no date set by council to discuss that.
I'm not sure, yeah, I'll double check on that.
But procedurally, as soon as city council have discussed it, we're allowed to discuss it, or we're not allowed to discuss it, but they discuss it.
I'm not sure, but, like, I don't know if there's like a procedure or any like outline, I think it's just generally speaking. I think they don't want us to be in conflict with them, and it's something, I guess, if they wanted us to discuss, they would. If it was something they wanted the commission to discuss, it would come from them. To do that. To additionally advise them, which is the role of the commission. So, hold on, the one you, were asking is to provide an update on Mountain View's plan, right?
Yeah, either
Provide an update.
if you, Tanya, know, if since you're in contact, if there's somebody who would be willing to do some highlights for us, a presentation, otherwise, if not, then I would be happy to put together a small presentation trying to summarize. I think it was, and probably was, was tracking as well.
So the agenda item would just be
Just an update on Mountain View master plan.
Yeah.
whether it's somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the second, there wasn't another one, right? It was just.
I would like to, at some point, if commissioners feel it might be interesting, just share some details on fire prevention aspects of certain trees, as evidenced by Okay. I don't know if it's.
Okay, we'll do a vote on all of them after, so the agenda item is, update on LA fire or.
Shared
Yeah, sure.
observations, plans.
Reference to what you just said, Los Altos has a plan. I forgot what it is. Called, it outlines, the fire safety guideline to all the residents. One of them is like, they've already said, I think it's like 5 feet of surround your property, right? You don't want to have those kind of dry vegetation around. And they have recommendation also about the fence, and the gate material and all that stuff. I think I just want us to be aware of, all this kind of CAL-FIRE. I think they are coming on CAL-FIRE recommendation. Now, we don't want to contradict with that.
Yeah, no, yeah, it wouldn't be this.
Yeah, there's a whole community. Do you remember what that whole plan is about?
I think you're safety elements, but there's one.
Safety element. Yeah, but it also has urban forest, it has fire safety
So as
guidelines.
part of our work plan, as part of whatever was in the work plan for the urban forest, and based on guidance from there, I think. Fire safety was one of the items to put and make sure that the
Yes.
urban forest.
Yeah.
And
I think in that document, it
just
actually,
may or may not inform it, it's just an
yeah,
observation, but. Not sure. But useful.
We have a lot on the potential future agenda items list. Many of which didn't make it.
Yeah, some of those are just the projects that we can do structured.
Yeah, and some of them.
Transportation will keep the transportation and then bring it back up.
Mhm. Same with, I guess, electrification, because we need it, but we'll let you know.
What we need, we'll do that.
No.
Okay. So does everyone agree with an update on his urban forest plan and observations from LA Fire? Okay. Great. Okay.
That's it, okay, that's it, right? This meeting is adjourned.